So who's the one who brought Buster home? The original Buster.
Oh, wow. That's a story I definitely haven't heard.
Well, my dad was still alive, and I don't know how else to call it, but a bitch dog came pregnant into our yard. And I know it had been dumped off of the rails. We had the Milwaukee Railroad go through our property about 3/4 of a mile. And it brought in all the gingers and all the people from the World War II that were traveling soldiers.
Yeah.
These soldiers were traveling from East Coast to West Coast to West Coast to East Coast, depending on where they had been let out in the West Coast to head east, or had fought and gone to the Pacific or what. So the train we always had chickens. My mother raised about 3 to 4 head of chickens. 3 or 4,000 head of chickens. So we always had chickens.
Yeah.
In fact, my brother swore he'd never eat chicken again. But every Sunday morning, my mother would slaughter about 6 or 8 head of chickens, put them in a pressure cooker, set it on the stove, and we'd go to church. Now, keep in mind, we didn't have electricity. We had a gasoline Maytag motor for our wash machine and roller. We had
Like a weed eater, kind of.
Yeah.
Like the engine that would be on a weed eater or a push mower.
Well, yeah, it had a kickstart.
Oh.
A kickstart washing machine.
That's closer to a car than a washing
Yeah,
machine.
and had a round tub, had rollers, and we. Now in those days we had pride. We weren't like the females of today who cut their pants so they look important. We wore blue.
Oh, so high fashion wasn't torn up clothes, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it wasn't torn up clothes, it was blue in your faded out jeans.
Yeah. It's fashionable to look like you work as long as you don't actually have to work.
Right.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of. I can remember in the wintertime, after we washed the clothes, standing in the corner, frozen, after they'd been out on the line a while. And eventually by morning they'd collapse and you could put them on. That sounds funny, but
Yeah.
it was true. But we had an old wood stove, and we put 2 tanks of hot water, tubs of water, and that's how we mix our water, and a bucket of this and a bucket of that, bucket of bluing, bucket of this and bucket of that. You might throw some soap in sometimes, and that's how we washed our clothes. And everybody's clothes are the same when you get to school.
And you went to the mall when you needed new clothes, or did you go get all the old feed sacks out of the barn?
Well, I had a cousin named Ronnie, and Ronnie would send us his jeans. He was, believe this or not, he was a little bigger than I was at the time.
Wow.
That goes back a few years. Ron's about 5'10" now, so
Oh, yeah.
I kind of outgrew him eventually. But we bought our chicken feed was in feed sacks. So the guy called my mom and said, we've got a new color of clothes in, we're gonna bring them to you. You need to unload 30 or 40 sacks, whatever it was. And that's what we fed our chickens. And then my mother would make shirts. And that's our shirts. We never bought a shirt.
Yeah. I imagine she'd patch them and stuff too when they get old.
My mother sent me my aunt, Louise sent me a nice wool jacket that she'd bought someplace. Man, it was warm.
Yeah.
first decent jacket I think I owned.
Warmer than a couple layers of feed sack.
Yeah.
Yeah, warmer and a couple of layers of feed sack. I wore overshoes for the probably first 8 or 10 years. And of course the roads always got muddy and sloppy, and well, sometimes you want to take the shoe off and throw it away. It was so heavy with just clay, you know,
Yeah.
bound on it. But it was, I mean, I walked to school with about a mile away with the Vivian Excellent, and then about 2 miles away with the McCully kids. And the McCully kids had passels, you counted by numbers. I think there was 8 or 10 of them. They lived in a 4-room house,
Wow.
just 4-room house. The school was a 1-room house with steps that went into the schoolhouse, and then there was a cloakroom in the front. And then there was a door between the cloakroom and then inside there was up on the platform there's a warm morning stove that you used refractory, and you put corn cobs, and then you started with the coal. You put the corn cobs in, throw the coal in on top of it, and then you start it.
That's interesting.
And usually the teacher would be there early, or one of the older boys would get there.
Get the fire started.
Get the fire started. The McCully boys had 3 boys that were old enough to start the fire, but a lot of them got called up for Korean service at the time, so some of the younger kids had to do it. And we had probably 16, 18 kids in the 1-room schoolhouse.
Yeah.
But the thing was, the teachers had time for the kids, and we weren't teaching etiquette. We were teaching math and science and biology. There wasn't any social justice to be taught. Social justice was do your work.
Was everybody getting pretty much the same work, or did everybody get like individualized work?
Well,
If everybody's in the same room.
each kid had separate abilities.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about a 1-room schoolhouse, if you had a slow guy like Stephen, the older kids could work with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Had a fast kid like me, I could work other kids, you know.
That's a good way to do it.
Well, I mean,
Kids grew up a lot quicker back then.
Yeah.
How old were you when you had a legal driver's license in Missouri?
I was 12 years old.
12 years old, the court issued one.
Well, what happened was my uncle decided at the age of 12 I could farm. We had 80 acres of row crop, which was we're giving half the crop away. My uncle said there's no sense doing it. You can get your butt off of the couch and do it. So
Because your dad had passed away when you were 7.
Plenty of
6.
work. Yeah.
yeah,
12 years old, got a driver's license because, got tired of walking to the liquor store.
yeah, right. Well,
We got a couple years off of working between 7 and 12.
well, what I
You
did
had
was
some leisure years.
well, I put down McVeigh Motors, which is a Ford dealer, and that was in Trenton. I had a Thrasher feed in Galt, and I had a trailer that I could pull behind the tractor to get the feed for it. We didn't have a pickup. And then I had Tipton's, which was the elevator. And I could most of the corn we fed through our milk cows. We raised about 2,000 head of chickens. We had 14 cows that we milked by hand.
Is that why your hands are so big now?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I learned a lot of muscle on that.
Yeah.
And anyway, it was,
I'd imagine the childhood obesity rates were pretty low back then.
yeah, you ran.
Too much work, not enough food for it.
Yeah.
Well, my mother every year would raise a garden, and we had a rule: 100 quarts of corn, 100 pints of corn, 100 quarts of green beans, 100 quarts of carrots, 100 quarts of tomatoes, and just is either 50 quarts or 100. And they went on the shelf, and every winter we ate them all.
Yep.
I mean, it's just,
And 6 chickens every week.
oh yes.
Is that
Every Sunday morning, my mother would butcher 6 chickens,
Yeah.
put them in this pressure cooker, and they'd cook slow, and feathers fell off. Everything worked.
Oh, so she didn't even pluck them or anything before she threw them in.
Mm.
That's a recipe.
Well, steam them off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Steam them off.
And was that your meat for the week, or was that?
Well, they worked till Thursday. Then we'd go to the locker and get some hamburger. The neighbors would butcher hog every winter. Everybody butchered a hog. And some of them were big, old sows, and some of them were young shoals. And we'd make sausage and bacon, that type of stuff. We really didn't do a lot of hunting. Now, when my dad was younger, he would hunt squirrel and rabbit.
Mm-hmm. That's good eating.
And that was pretty decent.
Well, didn't you? You had more pets when you were a kid. You had a pet squirrel, right?
I had a pet squirrel
He'd come right up and sit on your shoulder like a parrot.
and jump in my cereal.
Yeah. We have pictures of
So you
Grandpa.
So you did the opposite.
We have a picture of Grandpa with the squirrel just sitting on his shoulder like a parrot.
Yeah, he was our buddy,
No.
and he was our buddy, and
What was his name?
Frisky.
Frisky the squirrel.
Frisky.
I like that.
But one day my dad brought this dog home, and she crawled under the porch. Now our house was set on.
So's the dog from the railroad tracks, right?
Yes. We had you had 3 posts here, 3 posts here, and 3 posts here. And then the wood was, the oak trees were laid on top of those stones. And that held the stones. We had a 2-story house. And the house was, you had 1 room here, 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 and 1 room here. Now, you don't want to tell Stephen this, but
Take a drink, Dad.
this
You
this
need to.
this was the parlor where the mortuary was kept for the funerals. This was another parlor where you could spark a girl, because the living room was over here. Mom and Dad could watch. Make sure nobody got out of hand.
Yeah. I think that's a term I've heard used.
Well, I don't know if it worked, but anyway, didn't work for my mom. But anyway, that's the way they did it. And then later on, my dad built a back porch, which was the kitchen, and then we had a front porch and a back porch. The back porch is where we did all the laundry, and the front porch was with a cream separator and the milk process would do, and
So you guys could make your own butter, your own cottage cheese.
we'd make cottage cheese and butter, and the excess milk we'd take to town on Saturdays, and the eggs, and that was your cash. Really, that's the only cash you used, because you'd trade your cash for sugar or for
Flour.
Kind of the stuff you couldn't get on the farm.
most stuff you could.
That railroad dog, she lived under the porch.
Yes, and she brought out. I went under there. Dad says there's pups going there. Go under there and get them. The first little dog licked my face was Buster, and so I put him aside. eventually Dad took the dog and the other pups. I took them for a ride. I have no idea what happened. I can give us some speculation, but
Nice farm upstate.
or downstate.
Yeah.
Buster
But-
stayed around.
Buster was 19 years old when we had him shot. And then he had mange, he couldn't see and he couldn't hardly smell. And
But 19 is a long time for a
That
dog.
is an old dog.
Longer than our Buster have made it.
Yeah.
you know, I tell you what now, when I went to school, Mom and the dog was all that was at home. And that dog protected her from boars, from bulls. I mean, he'd tear into them like you couldn't believe.
Oh, man.
So whatever dog he was a great dog. He was half shepherd and half,
Half German Shepherd and half Collie, right?
yeah, as far as we know.
That's a good dog for keeping stuff away.
Well, and then you always had the salesman. You had the KKK, which is Keokuk, Iowa products. You had the Watkins man come through.
Poorly named, but
You always got all these floor brushes, and they always come down all these roads selling their Watts.
Yeah.
And
That dog made him
They're
change their
called
mind.
salesmen instead.
well, they were called something.
But Buster was your mom's companion for 19 years.
Yeah, when after Donna and I went to school, that dog was with her all the time.
How old were you when you found the dog?
Oh, probably 5 or 6.
5 or 6?
Right after, my dad was still alive when I had it, so,
Okay, so you have 5 or 6 and you had it for 19 years.
yeah.
Old dog.
Well, my mom called me when I was in a fraternity house. She says, well, Jerry, she says, I've got some bad news. I said, Uncle Wilbur died. She said, oh no, it's worse. Buster.
Yeah.
And, Uncle Wilbur was her uncle, and I thought, that's true, because that companion was my mother's mate for years. I mean, just protected her at night.
Well, like you said, there were some close calls where steer or boar went after her and he turned them off. He pulled them away.
Well, Jim is out there farting around, which is my cousin, and he was messing around, playing with this steer. Boy, he took in that steer took in after him, and Buster was there instantly. Jim says, I was never scared in my life, but that dog did it.
He's your little guardian angel dog growing up.
Well, God provides. I always believe God provides in necessities, when you need to. And in our early lives, right after my dad died, Uncle Rebs had a brand new 50 Ford custom line. And he took Mom and I and my brother and Aunt Ova, took us out to visit Louise. Mom had 6 sisters, and that was kind of getting my mother away from it all. Right after the funeral was in April and probably in May. So we went out there and visited. And then next year, Mom bought a brand new Pontiac and paid $2,400 for it. And
Was that the one that when you were in high school you crashed at drag racing? Or was that a different
that was
Pontiac?
the one that I experimented with in a test drive.
Okay, so that is the car.
That sounds more like you.
And anyway, it was Graham Busby I was racing. And anyway,
You won because you were going airborne. That's why you crashed.
yeah,
You're going way faster than he was.
I know.
I don't know that counts as winning.
It doesn't. But we had a good time with that. That was a lot of fun. But we went out there to Syria, Kansas, where they was teaching. He was always a principal or a superintendent of the school, and very successful. Bill was, and so we go out to the school and sit there and go through the classes, you know, and stuff. And they were building whirligigs out of what was it, Tootsie Toys. So I got to build my own windmill and, you know, some stuff like that, just as a recreation in the class. And one thing about Ron, for several years I got hand-me-downs. Well, in 1960, 57, I went by him about a foot, and that was the end of that game.
You outgrew your hand-me-downs.
Yeah, I outgrew my hand-me-down.
And then you traded. Or you just wore more feed sacks.
Well, the thing,
Yeah, I wore more feed.
well, the thing was, feed sacks were cloth,
Yeah.
and they would roll these sacks up, and a lot of people didn't have clothes without.
Well, that's why they added designs to it, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
So people could make clothes out of it.
yeah. I had one feed sack with Roy Rogers on it, and another feed sack with, I don't remember, Superman or Lone Ranger, but they did it. And of course, women had some pretty fancy flowered dresses. You know, you see them in calicos and things like that.
I've seen pictures of those.
Yeah, well, those are, I mean, that was out of necessity and was a helping sell their commodity, whatever it was. So that was kind of fun. And then as we got into high school, my mother thought I ought, well, I wasn't in high school, I was in 6th grade, thought I ought to learn the trombone. So I picked up the trombone. I was very successful at it because I could go out and blow the notes for the cows, and they decided it's time to be fed, and they'd come up to the barn. Didn't have to go drive them anymore.
You don't think I'll have to chase them back in?
Didn't have to go chase them back in. There was one time
Could serenade them.
there's one time I can remember. My dad was still alive at this time, and we had a gabled roof. The barn starts out like this, goes down, goes out, goes down. And so I was throwing tin cans up on the roof
Oh no.
as an exciting venture.
Yeah.
One of the cows kicked my dad.
Because you didn't have internet to play video games.
Right.
So you got to throw tin cans on the roof and watch them fall down.
Yeah.
No age of
Well, this
comparison.
cow kicked Dad, and there's some words that were not usually in his vocabulary. So I assume we had reached a new plateau of some sort. So anyway, he came out, and he got his belt off. Well, I knew what that meant. Belts were not necessarily a friend of mine. And he said, now don't you run. Well, I started running.
Oh no.
He says, the further you run, I'm going to whip you all the way back. Well, you know, there's a certain amount of logic, even in my brain, that kicks in. And I said, okay, better stop. So he whipped me back. Not real hard, but, you know, to teach me a lesson.
Yeah.
And
Probably still not as hard as that cow had kicked him though.
oh, I know. I know that cow kicked him. That's
That cow later went on to make his new belt.
Yeah.
well, it was, my dad had those Belgian horses that pull the tractors out when they got stuck in the mud. Yeah, it's just like having a hard man.
It sounds like they were just as well trained, if not better.
Well, he worked horses. He grew up with horses. And now, he bought tractors before my grandfather had tractors. And my grandfather farmed about 600 acres with horses. And they farmed with three teams. I don't know how many. I don't know whether there was 7 teams on a horse or 6, because you usually have one for the side draft. But anyway, these horses knew what to do. They start them at 6 o'clock in the morning, work up to noon, have lunch, take the next team out, and work until 6 or whatever time it was at night, and then work the third team till dark.
Okay.
And then next morning start that team out.
Take a drink if you need to.
And it was kind of interesting that, I mean, that's just the way it was.
Yeah, sounds like a good way to kind of divide up the labor, keep any of the horses from getting too exhausted.
Well, all the river bottoms had shade trees. They all had feed bunks, so they feed them, tie the old ones that came in out of the field, take the new ones and go out, and away they go.
Getting too hot or too overworked.
Yeah, we were on river bottom, so it's all flat land. Saw a lot of black snakes. Saw a lot of things in life. I mean, I saw some black snakes that were as big as condos, I think. Boa constrictors, they're black snakes, but actually they're good. So we never bothered them.
Were they like?
Well, you and your brother found something along the railroad tracks one time, right?
Well, we were,
Dead body, wasn't it?
yeah. Well, what we were doing, we always like to walk the rails and just mess around. You've got 3/4 of a mile, you know, and you can see the trains coming, so you can get off, you know.
Yeah.
We were walking down through there, and man, we found a man laying there dead on the tracks. So,
Well, what else was unique about him? He wasn't he was the first dead body you'd seen, but what else was unique?
his name was Jesse Owen Knight.
And he was the first black man you'd had also ever seen, right?
Yep,
And his name was Jesse Owens?
Yeah.
Jesse Owen Knight. He had worked for the railroad and he was moving to another location. Somebody shoved him off the train was the conclusion. And killed him.
Can only imagine why.
Money.
Yeah.
And anyway, that everybody in town was down on our farm taking pictures and running up and down. But I was the first one that saw it. And this train.
What was more unique? That it was a dead body, or that it was a black man and most of them hadn't seen one?
Well, both.
Yeah.
I've never seen a dead body. I've never seen a black man.
I thought you had said that your one-room schoolhouse had a couple of people of color, or was that?
No.
Oh, okay, I must have misheard you earlier then.
People in color were Black Hearts.
Yeah.
Virgie Coon. Oh, she was mean. But anyway, then, well, we got the all done with the kid, with the black people. And sheriff took off, everybody took off. The railroad bulls took over.
Oh, okay.
Pinkerton men?
Yeah.
No, well, these
The Pinkerton men came.
these are Milwaukee guys.
Yeah.
And we also, one summer, it's real hot, just about time for harvest.
Mm-hmm.
And steam locomotive went through, I think it was a Malik, but I don't remember the actual size of it. But I think it's a 464, but anyway, which is designated by axles, and set the field for. Well, we couldn't get it out.
The steam locomotive threw ashes and caught your farm on fire?
Caught the wheat field on fire.
Wow. Bet that hadn't happened in a while.
No. As my dad told Mom, he says, that's the most money I've ever made off of that farm.
The insurance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
The railroad paid.
The railroad paid for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
and we, later on when I was 12, my uncle put me with a man by the name of Quentin Sterling. Now, Quentin Sterling was a modern farmer, modern equipment, knew what he was doing. Smart guy. And my uncle convinced him to take me in that summer and teach me to farm. And Quentin wasn't too sure about a 12-year-old kid coming on the farm.
I can see that.
You know, he wasn't real excited about it.
Well, you weren't an ordinary 12-year-old kid. You had a driver's license and you built your first car by hand, right?
Yes.
Yeah, by 12. It sounds like you've been a farmer for
I
30
still
years.
got the title for it over there in the drawer. 1929 Model A.
Yeah.
I every year when I was about 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I asked my uncle for that Model A. Can I have that Model A? I want to drive it. Well, it was a rat rod at best, but I had it.
Yeah.
So one day I went, for every Christmas we drew names and everybody got a pair of gloves, pair of pliers, you got maybe a t-shirt, something you didn't need, but everybody make you feel good. Well, I didn't get anything that fall. Finally, Lorena, my older cousin, well, didn't you get anything? I said, no. Well, she said, I know you did. So she went up in the tree at the top, and here comes these, they had pencils, used to be number 2 lead pencils, 2 in a box.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was the most exciting thing I'd ever had in my life. 2 pencils, whoopee-doo.
Good Christmas is what you were thinking.
No.
Oh, great. They forgot. So they're just
I
giving
thought
me
Aunt
pencils.
Lizzie got my name, and
Oh, no.
she would do that kind of stuff.
Aunt Lizzie was the cheap one.
Oh,
She's who you didn't want to pick you.
yeah. Well, anyway, I opened it up, and it was the title to that Model A.
Oh, yeah.
I said, where's the car? Uncle Delmer says it's in the barn. You can put it together, you can drive it home.
They had taken it apart completely, right?
They took the clutch pressure plate out and threw it away
Yeah.
because it wore.
And they disassembled it.
Oh, yes.
Yes, so.
They couldn't leave it all together.
But they also took the parts you needed out to drive it.
Yes. So I'm going up bragging to my neighbor, I've got a Model A, mine. And he said, Walter's got a Model A, some parts back here, back in the grain bin, up on the wall. He had a clutch, a pressure plate, a throwout bearing, and he had a couple other items.
All the parts they had taken out.
So
you couldn't get it running.
Yeah, but it wasn't, the parts they took out, they threw away.
Yeah.
These were new parts.
Mm-hmm.
So I put it in there, and 9 days later, I drove that Model A out of that barn.
Drove it out.
I drove it out. My uncle was on the phone in 5 minutes. Helen? Yes. I don't know how he did it, but he's driving that Model A down the old road. And so my mother My mother says, well, I'll be over. Came over and they followed me back. He said, how'd you get this thing running? Well, my Aunt Catherine, who loved me, had sent me a Floyd Climbers restoration medal for Model A.
Yeah.
Now, Floyd Climbers was the editor for Popular Mechanics on automobiles.
Yeah.
Restoration, that kind of stuff. So I had a Model A I drove for a while, to the chagrin of my mother
Yeah.
and my aunt and my uncle.
Well, it's okay. You had a driver's license too.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that was even worse. That was the problem.
Yeah.
Well, the driver's license was for the farm to get fertilizer and seed and
Yeah.
repairs and
So you
things.
just gotta carry around a bag of feed everywhere you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I went by a few girls' houses on the way to the feed store.
Did you follow the family tradition, drive it around to impress people, then immediately wreck it?
Well, no, that was,
Or have a tire blow so you have a tire blow so someone can make a meal for
That
you.
is not a good place for your mom to go get in.
I
No thanks.
had a,
No thanks.
Nope, you bit my hands off. They're gone.
I had a lot of fun with the Buster. Don was a good friend of Buster. Every Sunday afternoon, he would go daydreaming. They'd go out and they'd build a ship and go sail it all through the ocean.
Buster was his first mate.
Yeah. One thing that was funny, Don got mad at Mom, and I can't remember what it was for. But he was probably he wasn't quite 6, he was probably 5. And of course, this is when Red Skeleton was on.
Oh, yeah.
And he'd have that stick with that red rag and stuff tied up in it,
Like a hobo.
like a hobo.
Oh, yeah, the spindle. Or, yeah.
I forget what his name was.
Yeah.
Clem Cadell Hopper was one of them, but anyway. So one day, I said, Mom, Don's going down the driveway. Now we had about a 50-yard driveway and then about a,
Because he decided he was running away, right?
yeah, he's running away, he's going,
Yeah.
and he had about a 3-mile walk to the tracks. So she said, I said, well, what are you gonna do? She said, let him go. He'll come back. So he got down, he kept going. Finally got to the windmill and sat down and waited for a while. Nothing happened. So he went on down to the tracks, turned around and came back. Still had his bag over his.
Yeah.
Came back in, sat down, he said, well, he said, I forgot my post toasties. I mean, it's, it's typical kids.
Yeah.
Forgot his cereal.
Yeah, one of the things my mom was always scared of us drowning, so I never did learn to swim.
But you taught everyone in the family how to swim.
Well, but that's logic. I can do.
You understand the physics of it, buoyancy, because you're an engineer.
Leading others to a skill you can't manage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I remember you teaching me when I was really little how to float and move.
well, yeah.
I
Well,
figure you're teaching somebody to swim.
all you had to do was just suck in air and you can float.
Yeah. Figure it's pretty easy. You're teaching somebody to swim. Either they
Now,
do
the
it
only
or it's
time
not
you
your
start to
problem.
sink is when he's passing gas. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a good chance that everybody's health is at risk at that point.
but it was, we had a lot of good times. Down 6th grade, my mother wanted me to take music lessons, so I played the trombone. And the cows were conditioned so that when I go out and play it, they'd come up. I wouldn't have to go out in the pasture and bring them in, because the food condition and stimulant.
Yeah.
That was kind of neat.
Any particular pieces you played to get them
When the Saints go marching in?
That's
No, one of the songs was, you remember, Running Bear, Love Little White Dove. I don't remember the song, but that's a,
Like an old Western song?
yeah, it was a
Yeah.
Indian named
On the
the Bray
Virginian.
that got,
On the Virginia.
On the Virginian.
The
Black
show?
and white.
Yeah, the show, The Virginia.
and it was a pretty good little.
I'm gonna pause it.
It came out in 53, so that would have been